Welcome back, students. We are studying Nationalism in India History chapter from 10th standard CBSE. So in the previous class we have seen the non-cooperation movement, the way it was executed, the way it was planned, and which and how the different social groups, especially the peasants, tribals and the plantation workers, how did they respond to it and what was their perception at the moment. End of the non-cooperation movement we did not see in that video, that we are going to see in this video, but still overall this video deals with background of the civil disobedience movement. In the next video we will see about the civil disobedience. Here we'll see the background of the civil disobedience. At the same time we'll begin with end of the non-cooperation movement. We studied non-cooperation movement. Later on we saw that how it did not get a good response. After all, it started with a good gusto, great force, but gradually started to slow down. Reason, there was no alternatives available to the institutions which the Indians had boycotted. Especially we had boycotted the schools, we have had boycotted their judiciary. So did we have the Indian alternatives for that? No, we did not have. So gradually the movement started to trickle, participants started to trickle down. Even we boycotted their textile, English cotton, which was made in the British factories, that we had boycotted. But did we have enough number of enough quantity of khadi or the Indian textile? No. So but what happened on 5th of February 1922, that was disastrous, that could not match with Gandhiji's ideology, and that is one of the major reasons that Gandhiji had called off the non-cooperation movement. What happened then? That you can see here, Chauri Chaura incident. What was the Chauri Chaura incident? Chauri Chaura, by the way, was a place at that time known as United Province. Now it is a part of Uttar Pradesh. You can see here in eastern north or northeastern Uttar Pradesh, near the border of Bihar, but in Uttar Pradesh we have this place called Chauri Chaura. You can see this on the Google map. I have taken the screenshot of the Google map. So what happened at Chauri Chaura? People who were supporting the non-cooperation movement, participating in the movement, they took a rally in support of the non-cooperation movement. It was a peaceful rally. Of course, it was a night time, so they had flambeau mashal unke haath mein the, and they were marching. Some police people did not like this, so those policemen started beating few of the protesters or few of the supporters of the non-cooperation movement. Some people marched ahead while few remained back, to whom the police were beating. Later on, the other people who moved on, they could realize that some of our partners are being beaten by the police. They came back and they started to beat those policemen. Now policemen realized that now they cannot fight with all these protesters, so those policemen ran away and locked themselves from inside into the police station. But by now the protesters, the participants of the non-cooperation movement, lost their temper. They're completely angry and they started to throw the stone pelting on the police station. They tried to break open the door, but they could not do it. Finally, these protesters burnt the police station. According to one record, 11 policemen who were inside the police station were burnt alive in this incident. And this is how the protesters of Chauri Chaura revenge that when policemen beat some of their members. But this was completely against Gandhiji's ethics, Gandhiji's ideology, Gandhiji's principle of non-violence. Gandhiji could never, at no cost, Gandhiji was a man of principles and he could not allow violence in his movement. So that Gandhiji was hurt to the deepest and he decided to call up the movement. This is how the Chauri Chaura event took place on February 5, 1922, saddened Gandhiji, shook Gandhiji to his core, and on 12th of February 1922, Gandhiji called off the movement. Now remember this year, 1922, non-cooperation movement was called off. Okay. Now next was civil disobedience movement. But still, wait. It was not that non-cooperation movement was ended and now the civil disobedience movement started. It did not happen like that. There was a gap of almost 1 decade. There was a gap of almost 10 years between the calling off of the non-cooperation movement and the launch of the civil disobedience movement. And what happened during these 10 years, that we are going to see in this video, and what happened during the civil disobedience movement, that we'll see in the next video. I have the background of this video and the movement also understood. Let us see. What's the background? Now, one movement was called off, non-cooperation movement, which was of course not fully successful, but still it had a very great impact on the Britishers, and it, at least, of course in many things, but at one thing it was a great success movement, that it brought again lots of people together, of different background people came together. So Indians started to be united as Indians. That the non-cooperation movement did. Of course some other achievements were also there. So what is the background? The Congress at that time, the Indian National Congress, was the largest political party. Of course there were some other parties also, but the Indian National Congress was the largest one. And within the Congress, Indian National Congress, INC, there were two opinions, that opinion number 1 and opinion number 2. We'll see both the opinions. We can also call that a generation gap coming in the Congress. We'll see, and you'll come to know how generation gap and how two opinions. There were some people, of course, the senior members of the Indian National Congress, those senior members who almost spent their whole life in the Congress, and they may be near the verge of their retirement in the Congress. Maybe those are 50, 60, 70 years old people were there, and they were the leaders, and they believed that this is not the right time for the mass movement. As we have seen that during the non-cooperation movement, violence erupted. So Indian people need to train first. This is not the best time. Even whatever movement will be launched now, same violence will happen, and Gandhiji will call off the movement. So this is not the right thing. So rather, they were against, such senior leaders were against the mass movement, and they fed up of the mass movement. Rather, according to 1919, remember in non-cooperation movement, under the non-cooperation movement, the Congress and the other parties boycotted the elections. Justice Party from Madras did not support this, and that Justice Party participated in the elections. That was again act. Which act? Government of India Act of 1919. There are several Government of India Act passed by government, but we are talking about especially Government of India Act 1919. According to the Government of India Act 1919, provincial legislatures were set and elections were announced for the provincial legislatures. Now what were the provincial legislature? In simple language, we have parliament at the national level, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, but at the same time we have state legislatures. We call them Vidhan Sabha in every state. So the provincial legislatures were like Vidhan Sabha. And Government of India Act 1990 says that the provincial legislatures would be set up in the Indian states of that time, and there would be elections for that, and Indians could also participate in that. So these senior leaders of the Congress wanted to participate in the provincial elections. So who were those powerful people? Especially Motilal Nehru, father of Jawaharlal Nehru, and Chittaranjan Das, another Congress senior leaders. They wanted to participate in the provincial elections, and they had their own agenda. Why they wanted to participate? They had a clear-cut answer. They said that three main reasons were there for which Motilal Nehru and Chittaranjan Das. Again, please take care. I am not talking about Jawaharlal Nehru. We are talking about father of Jawaharlal Nehru, Motilal Nehru. They wanted to oppose the British policies within the legislature. Suppose you do not like any law made by the government, and you are a common person. What can you do? As today, we can speak against that law on social media or with our friends. But suppose a person is a member of parliament who does not like the law, that person may speak in the parliament. So whose voice is more powerful? Not a voice of a common man, but a voice of a person who is already member of parliament. So they wanted to be the member of part of the parliament and oppose the British wrong laws within the parliament. And they also, second, argue for reforms. Same thing. You are not a part of any kind of law-making body, and you demand government to do something. Government may listen to you, may not listen to you. But if you are a member of the legislature, if you are a member of the parliament, and then you demand this should be done, so your voice has more powers and more emphasis. So same, they wanted to demand what is desirable, and same thing, they wanted to expose whatever wrong nature of politics the Britishers had in India, what wrong policies and democratic things that they were doing. They wanted to expose all those things in the parliament. These were the good objectives that the senior leaders of the Congress had with them. So to fulfill all this purpose, they formed a party called Swaraj Party within the Congress. They did not leave Congress. They were the member of the Congress, but they made another party, and the name of that party was Swaraj Party. Main founders Motilal Nehru and Chittaranjan Das. Just to return to the council politics, after non-cooperation, Congress has completely stopped into the politics or council politics. Now these people wanted to come back to the council politics. This is one opinion. Opinion number 2. Now we'll come to opinion number 2. These were the comparatively young blooded people, youngsters. Youngsters means not 15, 20, they are also 30, 35, 40 years old people, and they thought that Gandhiji is right. This is not the time to write the letter to the government and request to do something. No, we should fight with them from the front. Of course, they also did not mean violence, but they simply wanted opposition to the government and strong opposition, and they wanted nothing less than independence. They did not want a power to do something in the country. They want complete power. These and the leaders of them were Jawaharlal Nehru and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Of course, there were many other people, but these two emerged as a leader. So now you come to know the two opinions. One wanted to participate in the elections, council politics, and politically they wanted to fight. Others, total boycott of the foreign things, no participation in the elections, and on the street there would be a fight. So these two opinions. Now which opinion won ultimately? So before we'll see which of these opinions could influence the Indian National Congress or the Indian freedom struggle ahead, we'll have to see two other things that happen in the world, and of course these things also had their impact on the Indian politics. Number one was economic depression, and number two, formation of the Simon Commission. Of course, the formation of the Simon Commission is connected to economic depression, and of course there is a stage in between. We'll see that in due course of time now. So let's move to the next slide. So remember, when we studied Nazism in 9th standard, there also we had a reference of the great economic depression, the Wall Street crash, the Wall Street collapse that happened in 1929, known as Black Tuesday. What happened that, I hope you remember, millions of shares in the stock market, share market, were sold in a single day, and companies started to shut down, and US economy just collapsed, and US also could not help Germany. The Davis plan was made to bail out Germany. Remember last year 9th standard Nazism? Same thing I'm referring here, that had its impact not only on Germany but also on India as well. So how? So Wall Street exchange collapse, somewhere it had its roots in the World War I also. As a result, the US economy collapsed. All the economies were connected at that time. US economy collapsed. Obviously, German economy also collapsed. Then the other markets were also collapsed, like England, France, and other things. India also had it to face, because Indian farmers were growing in India. They're making their yield in India, but that yield was exported to other countries. Why Indian farmers were exporting? Because there was a demand in those countries, and in those countries, in their market, demand reduced. Where the Indian farmers would send? Nowhere. This is the problem that the Indian farmers faced. So from 1926, by the end of the 1920s, demand of the food agriculture produce started to decline, and by 1930 it completely collapsed. In export of the Indian agriculture failed, and the Indian peasants, both Indian landless farmers also couldn't get their wages now. Small farmers who rented out the land from the landlords could not pay revenue to their landlords. Neither the landlords could not pay their revenue to the government. All those who were involved directly or indirectly into the Indian agriculture were suffered, and nobody had enough money to pay the revenue. But at the same time, revenue was important for the government. Government also could not waive off, could not give concession to the revenues, but the people also could not pay the revenue. Now you can understand what was the situation. There was a clash-like situation between the common people and the government, and in such a situation, government forced the people to give the revenue, and some places government tried to extract, जबरदस्ती वसूल करना शुरू कर दिया government ने revenue. Obviously that again created anger and hatred among the hearts of the Indian people towards the British government. That was the first aspect. Now come to the second aspect, that already we have seen two aspects. Now Simon Commission. What was Simon Commission? So all what was happening in India, we came to know in the last slides. Indians were unhappy with the Britishers because Britishers wanted revenue and the Indians were not in a position to pay any revenue. During this time there was government change in England also. Election occurred, old government went and the new government came. Tory government came, the Prime Minister was Tory, or party's new government came, and it was said that new government was somewhat sympathetic towards the government, towards India. So Tory government was set up by an act of parliament. See now importance of the Simon Commission. Tory government wanted to send a commission, a group of some expert people in India to find out why Indians were not happy with the Britishers. What changes in the Indian constitutional structure could be made, or what can be done to satisfy the Indians. It means the Tory government wanted the support from India, and to extract support from India they need to satisfy the Indians, they need to make the Indians happy. For all this purpose they sent the Simon Commission. Okay, and that Simon Commission was not set by the Prime Minister, it was set by the British Parliament. It was a high power commission. Whatever report the commission would have given, that report could have changed the India's future. It would have been a very powerful report. But what happened? The Indians, here see this some important point I think I skipped. That Simon Commission came to India in 1928. Objective, it may be asked for 1 mark, to study the constitutional reform in India and to make suggestion. To study India's constitutional structure and what reforms could be made, the commission was to advise to the government, British government at that time. And there were some members, and all the members of the Simon Commission were British. There was no Indian member, not a single Indian was there. And the Indians thought that how a commission could understand the problems of Indians when there was not a single Indian person in that. That was the problem the Indians had with the commission. They wanted Indian person in the commission. So the commission came to India, and how did the Indian respond to the commission? Indians decided to boycott the Simon Commission. Simon Commission took appointment from all the major leaders and the major parties, but every party refused to give the appointment. No big leader meets the Simon Commission. Of course, some of them met, but all those that happened at the personal level, at the governmental level, official level, nobody met the Simon Commission. Even I think Gandhiji met, but the meeting failed and nothing came out of that. So wherever the commission went, it was Simon, go back. They are welcomed by the slogan Simon, go back. Simon, wapas jao. Simon, chale jao. Okay. And finally, Simon Commission did its work, made a report, and somehow report submitted to the government. But government also knew that the report is not that much valuable because the Indian boycotted. The report was made without the Indian cooperation. Simon Commission, we can say, failed. At that time, the viceroy in India was Irwin. Irwin was the highest authority in India, appointed by the British government. Now it's pressure on Viceroy Irwin to do something to make Indians come and talk with the Britishers. So Simon gave an offer of dominion status. What is the dominion status? That is, British government will remain in India, they'll keep ruling India, but at the same time many of the powers, many of the work will be done by the Indians. Indians will be given opportunity to form the government, and the government in India by the Indians would rule India in certain matters, whereas some international issues and currencies and military, some major issues would be taken care of, will continue to be under the British government. But like irrigation, farming, education, such issues they could have given to the Indian government. So dominion status. But it was not clear how many powers would be given to the Indians. And it was also not clear by what time such a government would be formed. So offer of a dominion status was unspecified in time and vague, unclear how many powers to be transferred. That Indian had this problem, but he gave two offers. One offer was offer of dominion status, and another offer he invited the Indian leaders, Indian politicians to go and attend the round table conference, Golmeez Parishad, we call it in Marathi. So round table conference, the India should go, it will be held in London, go and discuss about India's future constitution. So that's a very powerful thing. India's constitution would be discussed in London by the Indians. So meeting would be between the Indians leaders and the government. All this was decided and these two offers were given. So what happened? Did the Indian receive these offers? Let's see. So no, Indians rejected the offer. Indians were not happy with the offer given by Irwin. I told you the reason. The offer was vague, nothing was clear, even the time span was also not clear. But by this time, in the beginning of this video, I told you there were two groups of people within the Congress, seniors and juniors. Seniors were somewhat soft, juniors were aggressive. By that time, some of the seniors were so old that they had to retire from the active politics, and some, due to their natural death, they were missing. Now who remained? Youngsters remained. Now Congress came under the control of aggressive new leadership which wanted to fight, which was not in a mood to adjust with the government. So Congress refused the offer. Why Congress refused the offer? See, if there were senior leaders active and influential, they would have accepted the offer given by Irwin. But those senior leaders were no more available in the party and juniors refused the order. So what happened? Then there was, Congress had the practice of having one annual general meeting, and such annual general meeting in such a background took place in Lahore, which is now in Pakistan, but at the time it was in India, and that was year 1929. And the president of the Lahore session of the Indian National Congress was Jawaharlal Nehru. And in that session, first time, Congress said that we want nothing less than complete independence. हमें चाहिए पूर्ण स्वराज. We want complete independence. That was happened in December 1929. And at that time, Congress also decided, of course, Nehru announced, and Congress decided 26th of January 1930, we would be celebrating as our Independence Day. And henceforth, after that, 26th January 1930, every year we will celebrate our Independence Day, and 26th January 1950, we will will drive the Britishers out of our country, and by 26th January 1950 will be an Independence Day of India. That the resolution the Congress has taken. ये कांग्रेस ने निर्धार कर लिया था, ये शपथ ले ली थी, by 26th January 1950 India would be independence, and people took this pledge, and since then 26th January had been celebrated as Independence Day. But you know what happened? We got independence on 15th of August. But there was one tragedy. A very less response the Congress got. Such a powerful slogan they gave, but there was less response. People did not pay much attention to it. So Gandhiji realized that this is something we should be worried about. We have lost public support. Where the support has gone, I'll tell you now by the end where the support has gone. So Gandhiji thought that our public support has gone, we need to engage the people with Congress. So we need to call the people back to Congress. Okay. So where the people have gone, that's another big topic. I'll just give a simple idea about that. Sardar Bhagat Singh, he also gave the idea of Purna Swaraj, and he and his people, Hindustan Republican Association, HRA, is a revolutionary organization, a Krantikari Sangatna. They were ready to fight with the Britishers. They wanted to attack the British officers. They started killing them. They had the Kakori incident. Kakori incident means from a running train, these revolutionaries, these fighters of India, these people who, I don't want to go much passionate about that, they looted the train of wealth, jewelry of the British government. Of course, that was the wealth of India that Britishers had stolen, and these people took it back from the Britishers from a running train. So people diverted towards Sardar Bhagat Singh and his group. So somewhere Congress lost his base. So here we'll stop now. Actual beginning of the civil disobedience movement we'll do in the next period. I hope you understood this. If you have not understood anything, you can give a comment in your question. I'll read every question, I'll answer every comment. As of now, thank you so much. See you again in the next lecture, that is civil disobedience execution. Thank you. Goodbye.